Hi everyone, I'm Tony Tonkin and this is The Tony Tonkin Show. Charlie Kirk, the founder of Turning Point USA, was gunned down on September the 10th while speaking at Utah Valley University. I've spoken about this in many of my posts up to this point, but I just want to add a few interesting facts that I think it's important that we understand. This was not just the loss of one man. It was a flashpoint that immediately lit up America's culture and political battlefields. Reactions poured in from across the spectrum. Leaders in the US and around the world condemned the killing. But beneath those statements of grief, something deeper was already unfolding. The moment that could have united people became another opportunity to divide them. So what we need to talk about really is the shock and condemnation that followed. Let's start with the basics. In the hours after the shooting, nearly everyone, Republicans, Democrats, even Kirk's fiercest critics, spoke of their horror. Flags flew at half-mast. Social media filled with messages of sympathy, even from those who had clashed with Kirk's politics. This is the script we've all seen before. Tragedy strikes, the nation mourns, and for a brief moment, unity feels possible. But in today's America, that unity never lasts. On the right, Kirk's death has already been woven into a powerful story. The idea that conservatives are under siege. Commentators quickly called him a martyr, a man silenced because he dared to speak truths that the left didn't want to hear. Some went further. They claimed the so-called radical left has created a climate of hatred against conservatives. That universities, media outlets, even activist foundations like the Ford Foundation and Open Society have enabled a culture that demonizes people like Charlie Kirk. For many conservatives, the shooting wasn't just a crime. It was proof of war, a war they say the left is waging against them. Now on the other side, the story looks very different. Liberals and progressives also condemned the killing. But many refused to paint Kirk as a hero. They reminded the public that he himself was a polarizing figure, that his rhetoric often inflamed rather than healed. Some argued that blaming the left was hypocritical. After all, right-wing figures have spent years using their own incendiary language that they say contributes to a culture of political violence. For these voices, the tragedy wasn't about left versus right. It was about what happens when rhetoric on both sides makes violence seem like an acceptable outcome. And this leads us to the blame game. And so, inevitably, the blame game begins. Conservatives pointed fingers at activists, liberal professors, and democratic leaders. They said these groups had blood on their hands for vilifying people like Kirk. Liberals shot back. If you want to talk about violent language, look at Trump rallies, look at right-wing media, look at the demonization of migrants, of LGBTQI plus people, of political opponents. The truth is, the actual motive of the shooter hasn't even been fully confirmed, and yet both sides have already written their own narratives. Because in modern politics, facts come second, narratives come first. And what does this mean about free speech versus suppression? One of the fiercest debates right now is about free speech. Should hostile rhetoric, the kind Kirk often faced, be treated as incitement? Should organisations that criticise public figures be punished or even dismantled? The Trump administration has already floated the idea of cracking down on certain liberal groups, claiming they promote hatred. Supporters cheer this on. Critics warn it's a slippery slope, one that could erode the very freedoms America claims to defend. This is the paradox. In trying to protect democracy from violence, leaders may end up weakening democracy itself. Beyond America's borders, the world is watching carefully. Leaders in Europe, Asia and Australia sent condolences. But international media didn't just treat this as an isolated tragedy. In places like the UK, Germany and Australia, coverage framed Kirk's death as a symptom of America's growing instability. They asked if the United States, the supposed beacon of democracy, can't stop its politics from turning violent. What does that say about the health of democracy worldwide? For allies, this is worrying. For rivals, it's ammunition. So let's step back. Why does the response to Charlie Kirk's death matter? Because it shows us the fragility of public life. Every act of political violence doesn't just end a life. It chips away at trust, at civility, at the idea that differences can be debated without bloodshed. And when every tragedy becomes politicised, when it becomes one more excuse to demonise the other side, the cycle deepens. Violence breeds division. Division breeds more violence. It's a loop that America and perhaps the world is struggling to break. So folks, here's the uncomfortable truth. Charlie Kirk's death should have been a moment to pause, reflect, and ask, where are we headed? Instead, it became a moment of scoring political points. Conservatives rushed to enshrine Kirk as a martyr. Liberals rushed to remind us of his flaws. And somewhere in between, the actual facts about who killed him and why risk being drowned out by competing narratives. If this is how we respond to tragedy, what happens the next time? What happens if violence escalates further? The killing of Charlie Kirk is a tragedy, but the world's response, the division, the blame, the quick descent into narrative warfare may be an even greater warning. If we keep using tragedy as a weapon, we risk normalising the very violence we claim to condemn. So here's the challenge. We will keep feeding the fire, or finally find the courage to put it out. I'm Tony Tonkin, and this has been The Tony Tonkin Show. And remember, you matter, and facts matter.